GRT. Okay.
Live on YouTube.
GRT.
And we can go live on TikTok.
Yay. Yay. Math Thursday. Says no sound detected. Check your audio settings.
I can see what it says. It's great.
Okay. Lovely. All right, welcome to Math Thursday. We're back. So over the past couple of weeks, we've been kind of, with the holidays and full-time teaching. That last week, man, it just, I think it wiped out a lot of teachers. But as we've been moving through this time of year, we've also been kind of thinking about where this channel's going, and with things kind of being uncertain about, what platforms are going to be available to us. And so we are going to be launching, it's launched, I guess it's going. We're going to be starting to offer a little bit more things for you guys to access the content and be able to interact with and ask questions and all of that. And so we are going to be taking some, we're going to have a Patreon now. And so on our Patreon, that's where you can find all sorts of different membership options, where you can join a different live stream that's going to be for members only, and we'll be able to, it'll also give you an idea of how you can set up some tutoring sessions. We have some different things, that kind of little perks that come along with the membership plans. So check out our Patreon. There's options for all different levels of membership. And yeah, check it out. We'll have to do that again.
Why?
I felt like a mess.
It did feel like a mess. But I also remember we didn't do like a,
oh no,
you gotta join. Hold on.
Oh no.
Do you wanna, what about one of the pi symbols? The movie making magic. What's the FPS? Sorry. Seems like it's wrong. Okay, great. Here we go.
Come join us live for Math Thursday.
What about like freaking out about finals?
Yeah.
Let's start again.
All right. Okay, hold on just a minute. Freaking out about finals? Come join us for Math Thursday. What is quantitative math? I'm taking it next semester for my bachelor's degree. Interesting. Quantitative math. What is your bachelor's degree? I don't know. What's your bachelor's degree in, Shauna? Quantitative math. I'm assuming that bachelor's in education. It's probably pretty fundamental math. Like quantitative, I would assume, is going to be like just kind of like solving equations and things like that. But that's exciting that you're going to be education at the middle level. That's awesome. I'm so excited. I'm always so excited to hear about people becoming math teachers or any teachers in any way. Let's see. Okay, proportions and stats. Man, math and social sciences, you're going to be, you will have no problem finding a job. Anything with the math is going to be, you're going to be able to find a placement, I'm sure. Okay, so to get into, let's see, any advice for a first-year math teacher heading into this next semester? Well, hopefully your first semester went okay. There's a big learning curve. You know, when you first come back from like that long break from summer and you don't know your students yet, you don't really know necessarily the schedule and the content and all of that, but hopefully at this point you've established some routines and some consistency and some boundaries and things like that. If you haven't found yourself being able to set those kind of boundaries and expectations yet, like maybe you kind of struggled with that in the first semester, now's your time to really set that in motion. So next semester is just like the first semester, but now you know the kids, you kind of have your feet underneath you a little bit. Yeah, and just kind of, you know, if whatever was working the first semester, this sounds really silly, but whatever was working the first semester, just keep doing that. But also don't be afraid to try something new. And, you know, especially if something's not quite working or it doesn't feel right. Yeah, have a clear plan, reset routines. Yes, all of those things. Like, make sure if you haven't set up any routines, like routines, your kids, they want to know what they want to be able to expect what's going to be happening in your class, right? Sometimes, you know, I kind of switch it up, like, oh, we're going to start up at the boards and we're going to start in a group activity and then we're going to do some individual work, but then we might do some content stuff. You know, things like that can be a little bit sort of like, maybe they don't know exactly, like, you know, you would hate to have kids come into your classroom and be like, oh, and then we do the warm up and then we do notes and then we do practice and then we do homework and then we leave. Like, if that's your routine, oh, let's mix it up, because you don't want it to become stale. But that's kind of my big advice for heading into next semester. Okay. Synthetic division. Ooh, I love synthetic division. I think it's important to start with long division. So starting with long division in a high school algebra 2 class, that is essential, because then when you show them synthetic division, that can be a more of like a thing that you could show them is synthetic division. I always start with long division because otherwise synthetic division is just sort of learning the algorithm, and I always want to stay away from that, right? I always try to shy away from that. But yeah, you know, synthetic division, I think there is a place for it. But I do think it's also important for there we go. It's also important for them to know how to do the long division first and then go into synthetic division. Ooh, my favorite way to factor when A is greater than 1. Oh my gosh, this is such a fascinating conversation. So when you're factoring, when A is greater than 1, I always do the AC method and then split and factor by grouping. But I know that there are lots of other ways. There was this one article, I can't remember where it was, but there was an article where they went through and they were asking about, like, they asked all these different math professors, like, how they factor. And it was really fascinating how many of them did, like, you know, you have the X method like this, right? Where you put like 2x squared and like 18, and then you kind of do like the two things that multiply to this and add to this. But yeah, for me personally, for factoring trinomials where A is greater than 1, I'm going to just grab one. Factoring. Let's see. Okay, so something like 6x squared plus 37x plus 6. I think because this is the way that I've always taught my students, I just default to the AC method. And so the AC method is where you take, so when you're looking at these coefficients, you've got AX squared, BX, and C. So those are like the three things that you've got. So the AC method is where you do A times C, which gives you 36. So you're looking for two values that multiply to 36 and add to 37. So in this case, that's 36 and 1. So then what I do is I then split the middle term into 36 and 1 plus 36x plus x plus 6. And then you factor by grouping, which is where you kind of split this into two different groups, right? So I look for the greatest common factor here, which is 6x squared plus 36x. So my greatest common factor here would be 6x, and what's left over is x plus 6. And then over here, when I just have x plus 6, well, I actually want these to be the same. So the only thing that I can take out of there is a 1. So then, boop, boop, you've got 6x plus 1 times x plus 6. Yeah, it's totally factoring by grouping. I always tell my students, like, just looking for like those red flags or like those clues, right? If there's 4 terms, factor by grouping. If there's the 3 terms, right, you can do like the AC method, and then it leads, and then once you get it into those 4 terms, it's factoring by grouping. If there's 2 terms, you look for the GCF, or it might be like a difference of squares or something like that. So I like to make sure that my students all recognize like those kind of hallmark features, right, of that. Okay, let's see. All right, taking a survey of mathematics and don't know what to expect. Is that like a college class? So survey of mathematics would probably be like an algebra 1 and geometry mainly would be those 2 things. So algebra 1 and geometry are going to be pretty straightforward, kind of solving basic equations, and there's a lot of logic in it. So if you've ever done like Sudoku puzzles or Sudoku, I don't really know how to say it. Sudoku, it's spelled Sudoku. Anyway, it's all logic and kind of looking at how those numbers relate to each other and things like that and looking for patterns. That's going to get you through pretty much any sort of survey of math course. So this here, this factoring, this is algebra 2. This is mainly when you learn factoring polynomials is algebra 2. Do I think that the ACT math section is too hard, especially in comparison to SAT? I think they are different. It's been a while since I took the SAT and the ACT, but from what I've kind of gathered, right, from working with students and working with different levels and things like that, it's where, you know, especially with it being sort of a dynamic test now, I think that really shifts a lot of what's going on. I think that, well, I am not a fan of multiple choice math questions. That's my little math teacher hot take. I don't think that SAT and ACT really measures a lot of, I mean, it can give you an idea of basic mathematical understanding, but there's so many little like test taking strategies that you kind of go, okay, well, you tested really well on the SAT or the ACT, but can you think outside the box and solve this problem like an engineer? Like that to me is more of an indication, like being able to think outside the box and coming up with a new way of doing something. And you can't really demonstrate that understanding on a multiple choice test. But like I tell my students all the time, and fellow teachers and everybody, like it's just sort of like the way of the world right now is like, even though I don't think that it's the best measure of how successful you're going to be in college in your math class, it's a metric, right? It's a way that we use to like measure this basic understanding, but it doesn't measure any problem solving. So, I know that's kind of not really not what you were asking. I would prefer that if the ACT and the SAT math sections were a little bit more sort of like, and I know there are some short answer kind of free response sections, right? I think those are a better measure. But it's not looking at the work, right? It's not looking at the understanding. Somebody may get the whole problem wrong because they did 2 times 3 equals 5 instead of 6, right? Let's see. Similar to the quantitative. Yeah, that always makes me think of whenever I see the GRE. I remember when I took the GRE and I had already taken like 3 years of calculus, and I got to start like studying for the GRE and prepping for it, and I went, "Oh my God, how do I find the area of a triangle?" Oh my God, it goes back, the GRE really goes back to like high school math classes. And so I think, yeah, again, it's getting into all this standardized testing. Again, I was never a really strong standardized test taker. Like I did okay. I mean, I went to college and everything, but I did okay. But for me, it was more like I want to be able to justify my reasoning. And here's why I think this is true. And showing my understanding, not just that I could get the right answer or pick the right answer, right? Because you don't know if it's a guess or not. But let's see. Okay, how do you answer student and parent complaints that Algebra 2 should not be required for high school? I think that, if you don't, let me think about that. I think it's a fine boundary, right? Like, I think that Algebra 2 is, for the vast majority of people who are taking high school math and they are not going to do anything that, they're not going on to be an engineering major, or maybe they are, I don't know. But that's not in their plan right away. I think Algebra 2 is a fine ending point for high school. And that's what it is in the state of Michigan, is Algebra 2, because that gets you into some logical reasoning like these things. There are some concepts in Algebra 2 that you don't necessarily need to know to be successful in college or whatever occupation or whatever. But there are other things that you do need to understand, like when you're working at, if you go into a trade school, right, and you need to learn about using different instruments, different monitors, things like that, like HVAC and like voltage and stuff like that, you do need to have some understanding of where these things are coming from. And the main point of all of this math is not necessarily like, nobody's going to come up and ask you to factor this trinomial unless you have a math teacher TikTok channel. Then it happens all the time. But in a normal everyday life, nobody's going to necessarily ask you to factor this trinomial, but you need to be able to understand how to like undo that multiplication. Like, for example, you're planning out like a garden, right? And you have these word problems all the time about like, well, do you have enough turf to cover it, right? Do I have enough burlap to cover this garden? Well, I know that this much, I know that this much sod covered up this garden space. So is this enough burlap to then cover it over to winter? Something like that. So again, it's getting at more of the logical reasoning behind the math, and Algebra 2 really gives you that opportunity to put it all together, right? You're not just learning arbitrary lines like slope-intercept form and all of that, but you're learning more about systems of equations. Where are you going to break even, right? How much do you need to charge per sign that you made, right? You're going to a craft show, and how much do you need to charge per sign so you can make enough money to break even or make a certain profit? So a lot of times what I'll tell students, what I've told them for years is like, I understand that you don't think you're going to go into a math dependent field right now, but in life you've got to know this stuff, right? If you're looking at stocks, you're looking at the stock market, you have to understand. You're reading a newspaper, an article or something like that, and you see a graph, you want to be educated to make those different things. So I would say that algebra 2 is the minimum that should be required. I think it's a good stopping point. Is everybody going to be successful in algebra 2? No, they're not. But especially if you're going to college, right? Especially if you're going to college, you've got to have at least algebra 2. Most colleges are going to really look at if you took up to pre-calculus. Now, I've said this a million times that I only got to pre-calculus my senior year in high school. Because like I said, like I really struggled in math all through high school. Then something kind of clicked, right? Something clicked, I guess maybe that time I took pre-calc, or something clicked in college where I was actually like, my brain was finally ready to understand these things. If a student loves pure mathematics and not applied, oh, not applied mathematics. Got it. What jobs do you recommend? Oh, be a math teacher. Oh. If you love pure mathematics, be a math teacher, be a professor, graduate studies, yeah, researching, curriculum design, right? Like all of those types of things are really good, because if you really love just the pure math of it, you you have a passion for just learning pure math, being a math teacher, it's really great. And like I said, like I struggled in math, and I didn't fully understand the beauty of mathematics until I started teaching it, like especially at the high school level. Now I'm able to see all these really cool connections and help everybody. And if you love the pure math, you're going to like impart that pure math love to your students and to everybody who, loves those things. I mean, I wish that I could go back and do a degree. I don't know if I would do like a mathematics degree, but I would probably do like a teaching mathematics degree. I don't know. You hate math? Oh, that makes me sad. What helped me understand math better? Giving myself a little bit of grace, just being patient. And, it was, now it's such a big thing of like growth mindset, and I don't understand it yet. But like when I was in high school in like the early 2000s, that was not a thing. It was just sort of like, well, failed that test. Maybe I'll get a better grade next time, right? There was not a lot of reframing your thinking and trying it a different way. It was like, this is the way to do it. This is the only way to do it. And that's what it is. And you got it wrong. So once I kind of took the pressure off of myself to make sure and kind of emphasize more of like the understanding, not necessarily like getting through, because I had a lot of friends that were in really advanced math classes in high school. And so for a while I was trying to really keep up with that. And then I realized like, this is just not helping me. And so I just kind of gave myself a little bit more grace and patience. And once I started teaching the material, and I probably should have been TAing or something earlier than that. But, oh yeah, it helped when you see your math class as like a foreign language course. It is like a foreign language, and you just have to practice. And I started, that whole thing, like fake it till you make it. For a long time, I just started kind of like, I don't know, in my mind, I was sort of like pretending to be a really good student. So I would like go to Barnes & Noble or go to the library or something, and I'd have all my stuff, and I'd just be like, oh, I'm so studious. I'm such a good student. And then after a while, like, it just became like, that's how I studied, and my grades were getting better. And so I was like, oh, well, this works out well. And so once I started actually like giving myself the time and space and room and found like a method that worked for me to start like studying and maintaining my academics, it was much better. But you just kind of have to find what works. And sometimes, like, I hear it 1,000 times from viewers that like, oh my gosh, like I'm 35 years old and I never understood it until now. Well, sometimes it's like your brain biology. Like your brain biology is not ready to understand it. So a lot of times, going back to the earlier question, like Algebra 2 as high schoolers, yes, I think Algebra 2 should be required for high schoolers, but, big but, it should not be something that you're rushed through. Freshman and sophomore years should be still foundational, like algebra and geometry. Now, I'm talking about for the vast majority of students that I've seen over the years, right? There are always outliers, higher and lower, right? There's always the outlier case. But I think that the adolescent brain is not always ready to click in with this more advanced logic and things like that until sophomore and junior year. You see it all the time where you've got students who are being pushed into like calculus as a sophomore or calculus as a freshman. And sure, that works for some students occasionally, but for the vast majority of students, their brains are not ready yet, right? Their brains aren't there yet. So it serves you much better to take your time and have a really solid Algebra 1 and geometry understanding, because then Algebra 2, when you start mixing them together, makes it so much easier. So much easier. You're able to really like put all those pieces together, right? Yes, abstract thinking needs to be developed because Algebra 2, because with my students right now, when you get into like finding the area or finding the midpoint or something like that, or finding the circumcenter of a triangle, when you start putting it onto the coordinate plane and you're trying to look at where all these systems of equations are working, or you start getting into trig, you have to make sure that you understand that abstract thinking and how to put those things together. Do I privately help people with math? Funny, you should ask that. Yes, I do. And we have just launched a Patreon where you guys can join in, and you can kind of buy like some of the memberships include some like one-on-one tutoring times. We are also going to we will continue our Math Thursday for free. You can always come in and look at Math Thursdays, but we are also going to add in another live stream that's going to be private for Patreon members on, I think, Mondays is when we're going to go for it first. So check out my Patreon, but you can also check in my bio and the links and everything, and you can find ways to set up one-on-one tutorings sessions. So it's just a setup just like this, but I see you, you see me, you can watch, and we can exchange worksheets or whatever we need to do. So yes, I do help people with math one-on-one. But yeah, so please check out my Patreon. There's ways, if you like this content, if you like what we're doing, there are membership levels for all sorts of, needs levels, membership levels for all the levels. Yes. Well, Jen, you are definitely in the right place. That's actually one of the things that I help quite a few of my clients with, is adults kind of going back and relearning math. And like I said, like a lot of the biology, a lot of the brain biology, like once you've hit adulthood, you can get in there. Oh, hi, Haley. Independent math practice sites for pre-calc. Ooh, I like brilliant.org. I think it's brilliant.org. I don't have my computer right here with me, Jen. It's like across the room. But just click on my bio and you should be able to find the links and everything for the private message. Independent math practice sites for pre-calc. So I think that brilliant.org has some good ones. IXL is pretty good. Hold on, sorry. Khan Academy is okay. Khan Academy is better for more advanced math courses, I think, because Khan Academy tends to go way more complex than you necessarily need to. And a lot of times their questions that are on there are just nonsense. Like, I don't know what's going on with a lot of their word problems, but the way that they are phrased can be very confusing. But I do like finding their videos like on YouTube. If you're looking for like a specific video, the Khan Academy videos that are on YouTube are really good. But some of it is just what Sal likes. Yeah, I know. And that's the thing, is that it's, when you're trying to just find something like simplifying expressions, what I've noticed is when I've tried to use those videos with my students, especially when I was teaching middle school, it was like, okay, but only watch like the first 3 minutes of this video. Don't watch past that, because then it gets into like quadratics and factoring and all that kind of stuff. And so I think certainly like a lot of the earlier videos were definitely a bit all over the place. But IXL is a really good program. I don't know if they go up to pre-calc though. Like I said, I don't have my computer right here. But Brilliant has some good practice, and GeoGebra is nice. But pre-calc also, you can check out my Patreon and we can do some one-on-one tutoring. Some of it is just, taking real analysis. Brilliant is a lot of fun. I use Brilliant for a lot of extension with my students, and that is for both my kind of more advanced students and some of my students that need quite a bit more support and help. Brilliant is great because it does make it fun, but it's also very educational. Okay, so I just worked on fractions and think I have it figured out. Now they have me working on percents. Okay, so then let's talk about percents, Jen. So percents are really just, well, the word percent just means 100. Okay, so it's per 100. So a percent really is just like a fraction, right? So when you have something like 3 out of 20, right? 3 out of 20. So if you look at what it would be out of 100, right? So 3 out of 20, well, 20 times 5 is 100. And 3 times 5 is 15. So 3 out of 20 is the same thing as 15 out of 100. So 3 is 15% of 20. So that's sort of the basic understanding. That is the basic thing that boils down with percent. Now, another way that you can do this is you can do, so 3 is 15% of 20, right? Because 3 out of 20 is the same thing as 15 out of 100. Now, what you can also do is the fraction bar is a division sign. So 3 out of 20, I can also do 3 divided by 20. So 3 divided by 20, and I'm just going to do this good old long division, right? So I know I'm going to have to put in a decimal there with a couple of zeros, right? Okay. So 20 doesn't go into 3. That's 0. So 20 going into 30 one time. I have 20. Bring down the 0. 20 goes into 100 5 times. So 3 over 20 as a decimal. Oh, I'm going to move that up. 3 over 20 as a decimal is 0.15. And then you would multiply that by 100, which would give you 15%. Okay. So again, it's just fractions based out of 100%, right? Like century is 100 years. So if you take that numerator divided by the denominator, then you've got your percent. Okay. So then if you're trying to figure out something a little more, right? Like if you're trying to figure out, well, what is 15% of 20? Or what is, 18% of 40 or something along those lines. Okay. So let's just do 13% of 92. So anytime you see the word of, that means multiply. All right. So of means multiply. So 13% of 92 is going to be the same thing as 13 over 100 times 92. Okay. So with this, I'm just going to use my calculator. I'm assuming hopefully you are able to use a calculator. So I do 13 over 100, which is 0.13, times 92, which is 11.96. Okay. So if you're doing this with just a calculator or something like that, you don't have to put in that 13 over 100. You can also just write it as 0.13 times 92. And you're still going to get 11.96. So again, looking at fractions and decimals and percents, there's a reason why they're always taught like all together, right? In like one unit. It's because they're all just very much, they're basically all related, all the same thing. So fractions, decimals, and percents always go hand in hand. Okay. Now here's something that I was actually just looking at this. So something came across my TikTok feed or Facebook or something, I don't remember. But everybody, so I guess Hobby Lobby is having 90% off their Christmas merchandise right now. That's amazing. That's a huge sale. So a lot of people were talking about like, oh my gosh, this saved me like $3,000 or something like that. And so I was curious. I was like, well, how much money did they spend on all of that? So there was one lady that said, this is $2,956 worth of merchandise, right? But then I was curious, like, well, how much did she actually spend on that, right? So $2,956 worth of merchandise, and then it's 90% off, right? So at 90% off, right? So with this, when you're looking at these things, I'm only going to be paying 10%, right? So what I'm really looking for is what is 10% of 2956. All right. So 10% of 2956, 10% is the same thing as 10 over 100, right? 10%, which is the same thing as 1/10. Now, if I take 1/10 of 2956, that means it would be the same thing as dividing by 10. So 1/10 of 2956 is $295.06, or 60 cents, not 6. So 295.6. So she got almost $3,000 of stuff at $300. That still seems a little bit bonkers, but I mean, to each their own. Like, it made her really happy, so go for it. Far be it from me to judge. But yeah, so that was those like percent off and things like that. I do that all the time in the store. I'll go in and it'll be like, oh, it's 30% off. And so what I'll do is on my phone, on my calculator, I'll just look at, okay, so 0.7 times whatever that price is, right? Because if it's 30% off, then I'm going to be paying 70% of it, right? Oh, the decimal trick. Oh my gosh. Anytime you're calculating, 10% of anything. So if I have 450, right, and it's 30% off. Okay, so 10% of this would be 45 cents, right? So 10% is 0.45, so that's 45 cents. So 20% is 0.9. 30% is 1.35, right? So see, I'm just taking that 10% and I'm just multiplying it there. So then I can either do, okay, so 4.5 minus 1.35, right? Or you can use this when you're calculating tip, right? Like if you want to give a 20% tip, you move the decimal over once and then double it. It's a really easy way to calculate your tip, or to at least get your ballpark, right? You want to give between 10 and 20%. You can split the difference, right? You could do 60 cents or whatever, right? Whatever you want to do, but working with 10%, it makes it a lot easier to do that manipulation because you're just manipulating that decimal is the 10%. Okay. Okay. What should I do after Algebra 2? Pre-calculus or problem set? So Bankai, it depends on what you want to do. So you're taking Algebra 2 your freshman year. So I'm going to say if you are taking Algebra 2 in your freshman year, your college counselor is probably going to force you to do pre-calc. Just because if you're taking Algebra 2 as a freshman, that's pretty accelerated. And so you are probably going to be urged to do pre-calc. Prob and Stats is honestly probably more useful, but you can also take that your junior or senior year, like once you get through calculus or something like that. Yes, Elise, as a server, you learn 20% real quick. Yeah, get those tips, right? Yeah, I use that 10%, 20% trick all the time. All right, let's see. Any other messages? Any other questions that you guys have? I know you have, you probably have finals coming up. But yeah, again, if you would like to join our members only live that's going to be starting up here soon, go ahead and check out the Patreon. We have lots of different membership. If you like the content and things like that, you can, help us keep creating it, because who knows what's going to happen with these platforms in the next month. But that being said, you can find us on all the social media platforms. We're everywhere. Jen, yeah, let me see if my people can do that. High school math praxis. Is that the that's the teacher exam, the praxis? Hayden, I'm your math teacher. Mm. Okay, so yes for teachers. Yeah, so the high school math praxis. Yeah, Jen, I'll get you a message, okay? Um, so with the high school math praxis, I don't really have any advice other than review the basics. Um, I would say that the vast majority is going to be Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 questions. There may be some right triangle trig in there, but double check to make sure you know which formulas are they going to provide you. And yeah, which formulas they're going to provide you, the timing and all of that, and do so many practice exams, right? So looking for any practice exam you can do, or any practice exam that is available to you, that is what you can do. So Jen, this is really like every Thursday I go live. I took the last 2 weeks off and we had some computer issues. Anyway, but every Thursday you are absolutely welcome to join in. I'm going to be live. Usually I'm here from about 8 to 9 Eastern time. So right during this time, you can always pop in and send me questions and things like that. And I have lots and lots of videos available for you on YouTube, so you can find things. Yeah, so I'll send you a message too. But yeah, so with the teacher exam, yeah, I always hate it when teachers, like, I don't know, I've noticed this on a lot of like the teacher TikTok and stuff like that. Like I'm not the kind of teacher that's good. I'm not on here like complaining about my admin or complaining about my students and griping about all those little things. Like I'm I'm just here to help math be not so scary for everyone, right? Math shouldn't be scary. And so that's like what I try to always convey in my classes and here. And Dawson, that's real rude. But I'm always trying to like keep things positive and just helping people out with math questions and things like that. So math can be really confusing, but that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? Is that I'm trying to make sure that math isn't quite so scary for everybody. Yeah, because it is difficult. Any videos of measuring with metrics? Kelly, can you give me? Sorry, you can see my little pink robe because it's freezing in here. In Michigan, we are having a very cold week. Thanks, Elise. I'm glad you found me. Yeah, you don't want to memorize everything, but do double check with that test what formulas they're going to give you, so then you don't have to memorize them. Measuring with metrics. So Kelly, do you mean conversions or like actually give me a little more about your things with the metrics that you're asking for in biology? Is it like converting to different units or actually like physically measuring it? Okay, so conversions. So is this between metric units themselves, or is it between metric and imperial? Is that what it is? Imperial? standard units. So like between meters and feet, or just between like millimeters and hectometers or something. Okay, so when you're measuring in metric units, again, it's like with the decimals, it's all about, Todd, I did see that article. And I immediately started researching New York City tutors. I did. That was bonkers. And I had so many people send me that article. And I was like, it's not about me. I guess it's real. I mean, there are a lot of tutors out there that there are a lot of tutors out there that charge quite a bit of money for what they do. But that's just not me. I'd rather do this. Okay, so Kelly, so meters, liters, grams. Okay, so with metric units, I always do this. I always did the stair step. 6, 7. So here's your base, right? So then from your base, each step is just moving the decimal. Okay, so you're moving the decimal left and right. Okay. You live in LA and they want $150 an hour. Yeah, so check my prices out because I can tutor for LA time zone. But I don't charge LA money. Okay, so I've got my base. So when I'm going down this way, what's nice about this, about thinking about this as a stair step, is that these are going to be the smaller units down here, and these are going to be the larger units up here. So when you move left or right, that is the direction you move the decimal. So we've got base, and then down here is milli. And then we have centi. And then we have deci. Okay. Like if you've ever heard about the term, like if you've ever heard the term of like decimating something, it's deci. It's by a factor of 10 or by a power of 10. Interesting. Up here is deca. This is hecto. And this is kilo. Okay. Now, the base is where you don't have a prefix. So these are all prefixes. And what they actually mean is, well, I mean, they're a prefix, right? A prefix like changes the meaning of the word, right? So, or it changes the meaning of the rest of the word, like the suffix, I guess. No, it doesn't change the suffix, but it changes something about it. Anyway, so the word kilo, or the prefix kilo, actually means 1,000. So if you have a kilometer, it's 1,000 meters. If you have a kilogram, 1,000 grams. A kiloliter is 1,000 liters. Okay, so milli means 1,000th. So a millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. A milliliter is 1,000th of a liter. So there are 1,000 millimeters in a meter. There are 1,000 meters in a kilometer. And then all of these other ones mean other things, right? So milli means thousandth, centi means hundredth, deci means tenth, okay, like decimate by a power of 10, okay? The base, there's no prefix, right? There's no prefix, it's just a gram, it's a meter, it's a liter. And what this is it's just this standard unit of measurement, right? So you've got this thing, this meter, this meter, this gram, this liter, right? And they're all actual like things. Like there are original like balls that weigh exactly 1 gram, and they go through and like that's what set it to everything. It's really fascinating. Like measurement is actually a really fascinating thing, especially when you get into like weights and measures and converting. Anyway, so if you are converting something, so you want to figure out where you start, right? And then you take steps to where you're ending, and the number of steps you take and the direction is how the decimal moves. Okay, so if I have 4.53 grams, and I want to know how many centigrams that is, right? So I'm going from grams to centigrams. I know it's a big headache, but I promise you it is so simple, right? Doesn't mean it's easy, but it's simple, okay? So now we go, so we're starting at grams, so we're starting at the base, right? We're starting here, and we're ending at centi. So we're going over here. So we're going to go 1 step, 2 steps to the right. So we go 1, 2. So that means that 4.53 grams is 453 centigrams. That's it. That's it. Okay. If I'm going the other direction, right? So let's say that I've got, I don't know, I have 1,593 millimeters, and I want to know how many, I don't know, hectometers that is. Oh wait, I gotta leave some room. How many hectometers there are, which I don't know if anybody really uses hectometers or decameters. I don't know. If you ever use a decameter or a hectometer, let me know. I'm curious. Okay. Of course, it's probably because like in the United States, we don't use this system, even though the system makes way more sense than like, oh yeah, 12 inches in a foot, 36 inches in a yard, and 5,280 feet. Blah, right? So science, yes, we use this all the time, right? Science, because again, it makes sense. It's just moving the decimal. It's just all powers of 10, right? It's a base of 10. It makes it much easier. Okay, so we're going from milli to hecto. So this is a big one, right? So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the left. So here, I'm going to start there and I'm going to go to the left. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my decimal is there and I need to fill in with a 0. So this is actually 0.01593 hectometers. Okay. You would probably round this off because there's such a thing called sig figs. And if you haven't gotten into that, count yourself lucky. Ugh, sig figs are, ugh. I don't like them. Okay. So Kelly, is this helpful? Good. So yeah, the hardest part of this is memorizing this sequence, but if you write it enough times, you can do it. And there are some oh my gosh, what is it called? Mnemonic. Oh my God. There are some mnemonics that you can learn that will help you with this order of these things. And beyond milli, like there are other ones like micro, nano, like they do get smaller and smaller. And then kilo. So King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Are you able to tell me the difference between the logs and LN? King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. That's good. So the logs and the natural log, there is a slight difference. So mainly it's kind of a way, just sort of broad strokes, and that's more into pre-calculus. I don't teach a lot with logs and natural logs, but when you're working with them, it is kind of looking at how exponents are related to like the exponent and the base and the power, how those are kind of all related, if that makes sense. And the natural log is dealing with E, I believe. But yeah, the logarithms and natural logs are not a huge part of what I do, but I will. Oh, yeah. That's acids and bases. But you know what was interesting? So it was really interesting when I finally learned like what actually made it an acid and what actually made it a base, which was like those concentration levels, which was kind of getting in with the logs and the natural logs and all that, which was it was like the concentrations of the hydrogens and the hydroxides, right? Oh no. Okay, guys, hold on. I don't have my mouse. Hold on. I got to move my little thing. Hold on. Okay. Okay. I'm back. What was that inactivity thing? But yeah, acids and bases, like once I learned about that, like that was a big, like obviously that was a big moment for me in chemistry because I remember it so vividly. Like once that kind of clicked for me with like doing the square brackets and the concentrations and all of that, that was really, apparently it was a very profound moment for me since I remember it so well. All right. All right, guys. So we are getting to the end of the night. But please let me know. Ooh, taking microbiology next. Yes, yes, that will be fun. So if you are in need of help, now I was a biochemistry major and I TA'd chemistry and I taught AP Bio and biology for many years. So if you do need any help with your math or science classes, let me know. Tune in Math Thursday next week. We'll be back and check out the Patreon and all that good stuff. Have a good night.